This episode of the Inferno is presented by Pearl River Resort. Pearl River Resort is the perfect place to spend a game day weekend. With gaming, golf, dining, entertainment, and more, there's no better place to stay and play. Welcome back to the Inferno. Today's episode rundown is, of course, brought to you by Legacy Credit Union. Legacy Credit Union, the official credit union of UAB. We've got a great Inferno. we got a good rundown today, buddy. Mark Ingram, who's the UAB athletic director, is joining us as he does every single week. Of course, formerly of the show we had on Tony Courier Radio called the UAB Director's Chair, now called the Inferno, and we'll have, of course, the incomparable one. Coach Trent Dilfer will join us here in a second. But up next, the Uber story of the day. Coming next right here on the Inferno.
Trent Dilfer here, head football coach of the UAB Blazers. I want to tell you about my friends at Legacy Credit Union. Legacy began as University Credit Union in 1955 and remains committed to UAB faculty, students, alumni, and fans. Not only do they support the Birmingham community, but they are also proud sponsors of UAB and UAB athletics. Visit LegacyCreditUnion.com and find out why you should become a member today.
Welcome back to the Inferno, brought to you by Pearl River Resort. We have a monster show, a heartbreaker this past weekend. A game, of course, you're up by 14, 17-3, and everything's feeling good. It's like the point where you just kind of want, we'll talk to Coach in a few minutes, you just want to like stop. Can we just pause the game for about 20 or 25 minutes, turn the power off, just see what this feels like for a little bit.
Delay.
You know, can we have a little early timeout, something, you know, and then, you know, next thing you know, and because you knew they weren't going to get out without a fight. And, of course, UAB gave them all 60 minutes of some great games. So we'll talk about that coming up. But, of course, you were over there for the game, and you had some interesting trip details you'd like to share. Yeah.
Well, we had a great trip. I mean, otherwise, you know, I hate to be overly positive about a loss, though I did feel like we played much, much better. I think the players were optimistic. I've had a bunch of fans telling me that they were really optimistic about it, the way that we performed. It's probably the closest game we've really played of these Power 5 opponents since we reinstated football. It was the most realistically close game that we've had. So that's all positive. But, you know, we take guests to these games, these road games. We'll have some sponsors, or we'll have a donor prospect, somebody that's made a gift recently. We want to say thank you. We'll take them with us. And so on Friday night, we'll go to dinner somewhere, you know, try to find a local place. And so we found this, I don't know, some Italian place of all things in Fayetteville. And we get an Uber and get there, no problem. On the way back, another car. So this guy, I get into the car, and I'm in the front for the return, and there's on his radio, Van Halen, Running with the Devil, is on, and I'm like, this is my guy.
Yeah.
And I said that to him. His name's Alan.
No.
And I said, Alan, love your music choice here. And the next one was Steve Vai's Summer Song,
nice,
which is instrumental and is great. And then he just chooses to tell me that he says something about his kids. Maybe I said my kids hate my music, and he's like, yeah, me too. He said, actually, my son's grandfather is Artemis Pyle, the drummer for Leonard Skinner. He didn't say his name. I'm saying his name. So Artemis and his family, who might be out there listening, he just said the original drummer for Leonard Skinner. And I said, but the way he said it was and I was like, wait, your father-in-law? And he said, well, I never married that woman. I was like, okay, so you have a love child with this woman. And I said,
which is very possible with Artemis.
And I said, but okay, but he goes, I never met the guy.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, but it's still her father. And he says, well, she never met him either. And it was totally like he started telling some story from a Western sizzling bathroom or something disgusting like that. And he is going on and on about this and talking about it, and how yes, that though there were never any nuptials, formalities, formal bonding, union by the eyes of the law, his son is the grandson of, I'm assuming, Artemis Pyle, which is just hilarious. And so we talked about that for like 20 minutes, and it was a lot of fun. And I told him I was going to bring this up.
Good.
And try to really be corny about, Alan was a simple man. a bit of a free spirit.
Yeah.
You could call a free bird.
There you go.
know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I got that Friday night.
You know,
it was a good start.
Jimmy Carter turns 100 coming up here in just a few days. And you know who his favorite band is? And they're going to be playing something over at Atlanta. They're doing some big celebration. I think it's on Friday night over at the Fox Theater. Chuck Leavell, who, of course, was the keyboardist and piano player for the Allman Brothers and also played with the Rolling Stones during their Stealing Wheels tour or Steel Wheels tour.
Chuck Leavell's done a lot.
So Chuck Leavell is going to be actually playing for Jimmy Carter.
I got a great Jimmy Carter
of course,
story,
he's been
too.
in hospice for 18 months, but
God bless him.
Physically, he's not there, but mentally he is.
In 1998, I went to an Atlanta Braves game in the old Turner Field or whatever it was called, Turner Stadium, which at the time was new. And me and some guys I was working with got the tickets from Coca-Cola. So the seats were awesome. They were right behind the first base dugout, which was the Braves dugout. And we were like 5 rows up. I mean, awesome. Chipper Jones was on the team, and I'll say as a side note, he was a massive guy. I always thought Chipper Jones was just like some little guy. He walks out from the dugout into the batter's box, and he was just this humongous guy. Anyway, right before the game starts, out from the dugout and into row 1 or 2, Jimmy Carter and his wife, and they sit down. They are 2 rows in front of us, and he different than Chip as a little guy, and he was so gracious, and people kept coming up to him during the entire game. He never said no to anybody, autographs, pictures, whatever. I've never seen a person at a game eat as much as I saw Jimmy Carter eat. I'm telling you, it was like he was sampling the menu. Hot dog, cotton candy, peanuts. I'm serious. Funnel cake, pretzel. He was crushing it.
He loves himself some racing, and he loves classic rock. They said that the White House was filled with classic rock, drive-by truckers.
Good for him.
He's into it big time. And then you talk about Southern rock. So I had an old piano that was brought over to my house. My ex used to do these auctions and stuff like that, and you should do real estate stuff.
Yeah.
And so it was one of these old iron-back pianos where the strings were up, not laying down, and it was super heavy. It would take 6 of us to pick this piano up. That's how heavy it was. And we brought it over, and we were wondering if it could be salvaged. And so we found this guy at our church, and I said, do you know anyone that is a piano tuner? And he's like, yeah, I got this guy. So we call this guy. So this guy comes over to the house, and he's looking. He's like, it's kind of warped here. I don't think it's. And he's an older guy. And he said, so you're Tony Curry? I said, yeah. And he goes, I'm a big classic rock fan, blah, blah, blah. He said, you may know a guy I used to work for. And I said, who's that? And he goes, well, he was a blind guy, and he was one of the best piano tuners that ever lived. And he used to sit in the front, and he'd have a Bible in Braille, and he would sit there and read the Bible while I would drive him around. And all he would do, obviously, he was blind. He'd close his eyes, and he could tune a piano like he'd tune a fish.
Wow.
And I said, really? And he goes, you may know him. His name is Marshall. And I said, Marshall Tucker. I said, are you kidding me? He said, no. He goes, that was the guy they got the band from.
Wow.
Leonard Skinner came walking into the hotel, saw Marshall Tucker's business card sitting on top where he was actually tuning the piano that was in the lobby of this hotel. And they were trying to figure out a name for their band. They were like, what about Marshall Tucker? And they found the guy, and they said, do you mind if we use your name for the name of the band? He's like, sure, go ahead.
Sure.
Marshall
Wow.
Tucker. Now you got this guy in my basement tuning my piano. Now, what wasn't the Marshall Tucker, but it was a guy who used to drive Marshall Tucker around. So you never know. How about that? We'll talk some more classic rock and roll. And of course, it's brought to you by Pearl River Resort this week in Blazers Athletics. We had a great game, kind of nice. Let me ask you this: as an athletic director, I can kind of get an idea where Trent wants to go with this. But when you're just coming off a game like that, and obviously we don't take losses easy around here. It's got to feel good because you're a 24-point dog and you're up by 14. Let's just say what it was.
Yeah.
But you had the bye week this week. Is that kind of a breather?
Yeah,
or would you rather get right back after?
Yeah, we got a couple guys that are banged up a little bit that we hope will be healthy and able to play against Navy. By the way, while I can only disclose so much, positive news coming out of we had a very serious injury during the game with one of our players that, if you were watching, he was taken off on a spine board, and he returned with us. Mm-hmm. So early exam and MRI results really favorable, which is wonderful.
One
news,
of 2 UAB Blazers that had their helmets ripped off.
And a couple missed face masks that would have helped too. But so we were up 14-0, and we kick an onside kick, and I've had people go, why would we do that? Oh God, because in an unusual fashion, the ball bounces right up into the Arkansas player's hands, and he returned it. Yeah. Normally people just drop down to the ground, right? He returned it, which is a decent return. They also called offsides on our player, which added 5 more yards. So they started that drive from like the 25-yard line, our 25-yard line. And I was really proud of our defense again, for holding them to 3. Right.
Yep.
I mean, you're on the road. You're playing Arkansas. I mean, and they could run it really well. Hold them to 3 points was really, really great. And so you go, was it the right call? Was it not the right call? Well, it was the right call if we get it.
Yep.
Right. It's that moment. Like if you get it, everybody goes, "Oh God, what a brilliant move!" But I appreciate the aggressive nature that we were taking. Right.
What
you're
I
trying
tell
to get it and pour it on, and maybe be up 21-0.
You mentioned they have a great running game. They were ranked 14th in the country. They put 266 yards on the ground, and that the Jackson kid, LaQuinian Jackson, was unbelievable. I think
their running back is great.
He's great. But sometimes, and I work with college and professional football players my whole life, so I was asking these goofy questions, these Monday morning quarterback questions, and a lot of times it's like the coach sees something. He sees something.
Yeah, sure.
It's like he's
For
like,
sure.
well, I wasn't going to onside kick, but I saw something.
Yeah,
and
no,
and
this
I
is
don't know
not-
if that was a situation we can ask him when he gets here.
Yeah.
But a lot of times
not on a
when
whim.
you see a play and you're kind of like, yeah, it wasn't like, hey, listen, we're going to go score a touchdown today, and he made this up 3 days ago. It may have been something that he just saw and said, hey, looks like a great opportunity. Maybe we got one coverage here. We got a situation where we can, and you'll see that with,
For sure.
with fakes.
Yeah,
and everything else.
they're not just sitting there and then, hey, Molly engineer, should we kick a onside or not?
Catch him off guard. Yeah, I mean, obviously you're up 14 points, and the element of surprise certainly would have been there. But it didn't.
It didn't work out, but that's how they got their first 3. Then we get 3. I mean, we really played well. We certainly shocked them early.
Yes.
Right? And then by the end of the game, we out-penaltied them. And I thought that was really the difference. We had 10 penalties for over 100 yards versus their 6 for like 65 yards. And we helped them out of some jams at some critical times. I mean, heck, that last drive, and there was another one during the game where I think there were 3 10 or 15-yard penalties that basically was their entire drive.
Yeah.
And had it not been for that, I may have a different outcome
You
today.
can't say enough for Jacob Zeno, guy that just, lights out. I think at one point he was like 21 of 23, 3 touchdowns,
He's
0
very
picks.
accurate.
He was throwing
He
lights out,
throws
so.
an interception, which if you watch the game again, it was a tip pass. So not unlike the last one that he threw, he releases and their defensive end gets just the tip of his finger on the ball. It flutters up in the air. And so I think if he doesn't do that, maybe a touchdown.
Head coach Trent Dilfer will join us here on the Inferno in just a few minutes, presented by Pearl River Resort. Anything else going on in the world of UAB athletics?
Yeah, listen, man, our Olympic sports are having a great fall. Both soccer teams and volleyball are doing really well. We're at home this week, so Thursday night we have women's soccer and volleyball at home at 7 o'clock. Friday and Saturday we've got a volleyball tournament this weekend. Friday night we play Auburn at home in volleyball, and then Saturday night Florida Atlantic men's soccer 7 o'clock. So David Lilly, our new soccer coach, is just doing a fantastic job. I'm so excited for the work that he's doing, and so I hope that you'll come out and see our 2 soccer teams and our volleyball team.
Going to talk some professional football coming up here in just a few seconds here on the Inferno.
The if in life, it's a world of possibilities. If you go for a night out with friends, if you can keep an eye on your money along the way, if you know you have overdraft protection with no fee transfers from savings, when you get a low balance alert, it's easier to say yes to fun. If that sounds good, try Regions Life Banking.
Stay ready for the if in life. Regions Bank embrace the if in life.
And here he comes, Trent Dilfer, of
Ladies
course, the
and
UAB
gentlemen.
coach, joins us right here on the Inferno. By the way, this is not Trent's show, it's not Andy's show, it's Trent and Andy's show, and Mark's show, and my show. We do the whole thing, the Inferno. So Andy Kennedy will join us a little bit later on during the basketball season, and obviously a lot of football to talk about. Coach, how you doing, brother? What's going on? Good to see that big smile on your face.
It's hard sometimes, but I'm obviously gutted. There's a lot of ways we could have won that game. Same story, different week. But the theme of the week was, hey, no matter what happens in Arkansas, we got to come out of this better. Like at every part of the building. I looked at recruiting and I said, you guys got to be better. Operations, you got to be better. It's coaching staff and players, myself. It started with me, and I thought we did that. I thought as a building for the week, we made huge strides, and I think a lot of that showed by the kids, how free they played, their effort. There was just a cool vibe on the sideline. Even when it turned toward late and it was like, okay, this is going to maybe take a miracle to win this thing. Even then, it wasn't like the air was let out of the balloon. There was still belief. There was still hope. Evident. I know we had the one where one of our players did the mouthpiece, yanked it out, and we got a personal foul there. But besides that, we held our composure great. There's some across the line type play on the other side, and our guys didn't react to it all game long. They really turned their back to it and just went back and played the next play. So I was proud of how they competed. But I also told them this in our last meeting. I said, we felt good about how we competed against Georgia last year. Then we went 1-3 in the next 4. I said, we can't feel good about this.
Yep.
We can feel good about the improvements we made, but there's got to be an edge around here daily of getting better so that now the good things we're seeing culture-wise and growth-wise start showing up in wins instead of these like, almost again. And I just can't live with that. So that message was made very clear that this has to be a launching point to making winning a habit.
Can you talk a little bit about what we talked about this right before we came in? You're up 14. And, of course, as a UAB Blazer fan, I'm sitting there going, wow, I wanted to take a picture of the TV. And I'm like, can we just stop the game right now, turn the lights off, let's just take a breather for about 30 or 35 minutes and revel in this and maybe we kind of reset ourselves. But when you're in that moment and you know that it's fluid and it's moving forward, how do you react to that? Because obviously you've been in every type of situation, including a Super Bowl where that's happened for you.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was most proud of is, I hear 2 conversations in the game. I hear the one between the coaches. We wear these headsets and I can toggle back between offense and defense. So I know what the internal coaching conversation is. And then in my open ear, I can hear the team conversation. You can hear what's going on the sideline. And it was very encouraging. Nobody was like excited. Nobody was surprised. They felt like, oh, okay, this approach is working. The approach was 8 seconds of the very best you have, flush it and go back to the next 8 seconds. And I kept saying on the sideline, hey, nothing's changed. And I said, that'd be easy to say if we're down 14. Now I'm just saying it up 14. Nothing's changed, though. The methodology is not any different. And I do believe they really appreciated that. And that's kind of what their mindset was. And there was never any extreme highs or lows. I shouldn't say never. We had 2 instances on the sideline where a player started to get too high and another player went over. One was an injured player and one was an active player, but we had an injured player go over to a player that was kind of getting overly emotional, upset about something that happened on the previous play. And he just literally, it was like he had recorded our team meetings and played it back to him.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, there's growth. There's growth when you have a player, one of our best players who got knocked out of the game is now, reaffirming our team beliefs and our culture and our values to another player that's starting to react instead of respond a little bit. So there's a lot of growth, but again, none of it matters unless we get better this week during the bye and get better in our week of prep versus Navy, and then actually execute on the level that we expect to execute at.
And, of course, the Navy game last year was one of those games where a head-scratcher. It was one of those weird games where you're like, what?
Thanks for the
just
reminder.
happened?
Wasn't that nice?
Well, no, I bring it up because, he was the one that reminded his team we went 1-3 after the Georgia game. And so you want to remember those games. And, you sit there and say you don't remember, but you actually do. We're going to talk some NFL in just a few minutes. I want to get your thoughts on Tua Tagovailoa, but you do have the bye week this week. Good time for you. I know you got a couple guys banged up. And what do you normally do during your bye week?
It's a perfect time. Normally I could give coach speak and be like, it'd come anytime. No, this is the perfect time. We're battered and bruised, not beaten, I would say. Physically, we have a lot of really good players that are just beat up.
Yeah.
And this will be a great opportunity for them to get their bodies back. I think emotionally, I think the Monroe game was – there's no words to explain how painful that was. And the emotional equity it took to flush it, I think, was taxing. And then to get up for an SEC opponent. So it was back-to-back, polar opposite emotions was draining. So I think emotionally they're a little drained. So I gave them Monday completely off. Don't come in the building. Unless you have mandatory treatment, do not be in this building. Don't come in and say hi. You don't want to see us. We don't want to see you. We all need a break. And then normally you would practice on Tuesday. I gave them just a training day. So they're going to lift. They're going to move around a little bit. They're going to have some academic catch-up stuff. But again, just where they have 2 days without coaches, I think is important for them emotionally. And then Wednesday, Thursday, we'll have good practices. They won't be war daddies or anything, but they'll be good practices. And then Friday, have a walk, train day, kind of just a mental day on our next opponent, and then let them go have 50 hours or so to be with their family. They won't get a chance to see their family for a while, so a lot of them are close enough in the Southeast where they can drive and see
There you go. You're watching the Inferno. Trent Dilfer, of course, the head coach of the UAB Blazers. He is the UAB Blazer AD and does a fantastic job. We've been doing a show together for like 2 or 3 years and so happy to have now Trent part of that. And Andy Kennedy will join us a little bit later on this fall as well. Wanted to ask you about some National Football League stuff, and I love the fact that we can kind of go all over football because you've done it all. You obviously work with Tua Tagovailoa quite a bit in his life. You saw things in him that a lot of people didn't see even before he became a great quarterback in his own right. But obviously just something that's just really, really hard to swallow. And another concussion this past week. It's his third, but a lot of people are saying it's probably his fourth, fifth, or maybe even his sixth. And now people are kind of getting in his ear saying, listen, it's time to hang it up. Take care of your family. You got your contract. What do you, as a friend, as a coach, what do you say to a guy like that if he asks you?
Well, I have a unique perspective, too. I had 14. And Mark's like, well, that makes way more sense now.
This is starting to come together.
Yeah, this is all coming together now. But, early in my generation, they were called dings. You're dinged up.
Oh, Trent's all right. He just got his bell rung.
Yep,
Yeah.
little loopy.
That's it. He'd be all right.
So when I had my career ended, I was knocked out for 3.5 minutes at Candlestick, and everybody said to retire. And so then the neurologist and the team went back through the records. I'm like, well, that was probably a concussion, even though it wasn't labeled one. That was probably a concussion.
Right.
So they call it 14, 4 of which were, big time. Like you're knocked out. You don't remember anything. It takes you a week, 2 weeks to get back to baseline. So I guess I have that perspective. Now, it was my 14th year that it happened. This is happening in the middle of his career, if not the early part of his career. One, I don't believe in giving other people advice if you're not living in their shoes. You know what I mean? Like, I think when these guys with good intentions, some of my friends, some of my old colleagues are getting on saying, well, he needs to do this, he should do that. I think you have to be very careful when you start telling people what they should do and what they need to do when you're not walking in their shoes. I think you can give context, you can give perspective. And I appreciate some of these people saying, hey, he's got kids, he needs to raise a family, it's more important than football. I agree with all those things. But at the end of the day, this is Tua's decision. Mm-hmm. And I'll talk to Nalo and Diana's parents, I'm sure, probably later on this week. But I'm not going to give advice. I'm just going to give you perspective on how, my situation changed. Now, I've gone, since then, I will say this too, I think you go on after your career and you get a lot of tests done. Like, I've had a lot of testing done over the past 10, 15 years since I've stopped playing. And my brain is fine. Not every brain that got beat up is CTE, and not everybody's going to die. Like, I think that's something people need to understand. Yes, some of it is happening. And yes, there's a chance that your brain's going to get beat up and you're going to have long-term effects, but it's not guaranteed. And I think that's what the player has to kind of process, is how much of this am I willing to risk? Where do I stand? How long do I stay out before I play the next one if I choose to play? I think all these are things that Tua has to answer, and I appreciate people wanting to make his decision for him because that seems to be the world we live in. Yeah. But that's his decision and his family's
It's unfortunate because he is special, and I want to see him play because I know he's a hell of an athlete. I love to watch him play. Mm-hmm. I am, with silver lining certainly attached, I am glad that he got paid. I'm glad he got his money when he did because he should be set for a while.
Well, not to get off on like this, but it's also interesting. You can get concussions from a lot of things. And as many people that will not let their children play football, they will let them play soccer.
And there's more there.
There's more there. There's more there. I mean, at least we're wearing a helmet, And, it's kind of remarkable how we view that. But ice hockey and wrestling
I actually saw there's more
gymnastics.
There's more in lacrosse than there is.
There's a ton. A ton.
It's unfortunate. And really, your everyday Joe, I know I've had several. Your everyday Joe gets concussions.
But we really pay close attention to them. Football. Do
you remember we used to have the three? There used to be 3 types of concussions. That was it. You were a part of 3 groups, man. 1, 2, or 3. You got a 1, 2, or 3.
Oh, yeah, with how they graded them.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you graded them. That was it.
And you'd have to be knocked out to ever get a
no one ever got a 3.
Yeah.
And, now, of course, it's so widespread. But, really interesting stuff.
Are you getting sacked by monthly fees on your checking account? Trent Dilfer here, head coach of the UAB Blazers. Legacy Credit Union's everyday checking account can get you back in the game. No minimum balance, no monthly fees, and get paid up to 2 days early. Check out LegacyCreditUnion.com for more information and apply today. Legacy, the official credit union of UAB.
The Inferno, presented by Pearl River Resort. Great show again, gentlemen. Looking forward to, of course, having Andy come in a little bit later on. Are we ever going to have an opportunity? I know you guys wanted to do a podcast together. We're going to have Andy and you on at the same time.
Andy and I have had real conversations about, our sympathy for you two, having been two of the best looking bald men in the Southeast.
Tough.
And trying to hold up to that. So this is actually for you two.
Yeah, okay.
We thank you.
No, our schedules, listen, Andy and I, we're lucky to get together once every 2 weeks. We're both so busy, but yes, you will get us both on at some point.
Well, enjoy your bye week, man. And Navy's next.
Here come the mids.
All right. Go Blazers until next week. We do the show every single week. By the way, you can hear the show on Tony Curry Radio, TKR, at least 5 days a week. We run it all day, every day, because it's one of our favorite programs. Of course, you can also find it wherever you get your favorite podcast, available on Spotify. Anywhere you find your podcast, on every major indice, you'll find The Inferno with Trent Dilfer, Mark Ingram, and, of course, Tony Curry. This is The Inferno. Have a good week. This episode of The Inferno is presented by Pearl River Resort. Call on an early weekend and head over to Pearl River Resort, where it's always no work and all play at Silverstar, Golden Moon, and Dancing Rabbit Golf Club. And be sure to catch the big game excitement at Timeout Lounge.